Hello, and thank you for watching this video about the City of Wichita's current activation grant opportunity. This is a recorded version of our info sessions held on September 16th and 23rd. My name is Jesse Koza, and I am the Cultural Arts Administrator for the City of Wichita's Division of Arts and Cultural Services. I will give you my contact info at the end of this presentation if you need to ask me any questions. I'd like to start out by just briefly pointing out our artwork here on the presentation. This is by Evan Yazzie. He created the cover of our current cultural plan and a recent sticker for the division. You can see his work at graphiccd.com listed there in the lower right. This presentation will go over a lot of the guidelines for this grant opportunity, but it is not meant to be a substitute for reading the guidelines. We spent a lot of time working on them, and so we'd love for you to take a moment to read them. I can show you where to find those here in just a few minutes. The Division of Arts and Cultural Services is a local arts agency. We work to support and advance both our local community of artists and arts and cultural organizations, and the overall arts in our local community. Our mission is to ensure everyone has equitable access to cultural arts opportunities by activating and strengthening the creative potential of our community. That's where the title Activation Grant comes from. Our vision is that Wichita is recognized as a community where artistic expression is an integral part of the city's success, arts thrive, and cultural heritage is preserved and celebrated. The Activation Grant is a combination of multiple previous grant opportunities. For a little over 10 years, the City of Wichita offered Artist Access Grants, which were for professional development for individuals. Developing Arts Grants existed for about the same period and offered capacity building grants for organizations with small annual expenditures or just small budgets in general. And last year, we started our Arts Thrive grant opportunity. We received funding from the NEA to do programmatic funding, and we wanted to continue its spirit with the Activation Grant. These grants are all funded by the city's Cultural Arts Mill Levy equivalent. If you're ever curious about the Mill Levy equivalent, check out the Cultural Plan, as there's a big section in the back that explains how it's calculated, where it comes from, and what it goes toward. If you'd like to read the Cultural Plan, you can find it at wichita.gov/arts. We are currently estimating that a little over $50,000 will be available for these awards. We will not know that final total until the operational grants are approved by City Council. Requests can be between $500 and all the way to $10,000. Again, this opportunity follows the spirit of all three of the previous opportunities. Artist access requests were usually up to $1,000, but now theoretically that request can be higher. Arts Thrive grants were $25,000, and while we haven't hit that number, we're still offering programmatic funding. We will get back to this idea, but the Activation Grant opportunity was designed to fit in with the Cultural Plan. Project categories. This grant is, essentially, 4 grants in one opportunity. You can be an individual or group of individuals, or you can represent an organization. As either of those groups, you can apply for programmatic funding, funding to make art, or capacity building funding, which is the professional development idea I mentioned. We use the term capacity building because it's more applicable to organizations, but we still want individuals to consider applying for it as well. Just think of it as professional development. A quick note, I use the word project for both types of funding throughout this. I will try to make sure what I'm talking about is clear. Examples for each of these categories can be found in the project guidelines. Those lists are not exhaustive. If you have an idea and you aren't sure whether it applies, just ask me. If you want to apply but don't have a solid idea, check the lists in the guidelines. Something might resonate. As I said, individual artists, groups of artists, or arts and culture nonprofit organizations can apply. There are some caveats. If you represent an arts and cultural nonprofit organization and that organization receives a 2026 operational grant, you are not eligible to receive money from this opportunity. Those grants should be announced a few weeks before the Activation Grant application is due. If you are considered a cultural institution, you are also not eligible. If you represent a support organization of a nonprofit arts and culture organization, often titled Friends of, you would be eligible. And then individuals who are employed on a full-time basis by the City of Wichita, like myself, are ineligible. To continue the spirit of our previous awards, if you receive a capacity building award from this opportunity, you must wait at least a year before applying again. If you receive project funding, and here that refers to funding to make art, programmatic funding, you have to wait 2 years. We set those times up to spread the awards out as much as we can. Project specifics. All programmatic funding, that's the to make art funding, must be used on projects that serve the residents of the City of Wichita. If you are applying for capacity building funding, which includes professional development for individuals, that funding has to be used by organizations or artists whose work serves the residents of the City of Wichita. To clarify, we know if you're an organization looking to improve your marketing, that work isn't necessarily going to directly serve our residents, but your work as an organization directly serves them. Thus, by improving your organization, we are improving the services received by our residents. Your project must align with a goal, objective, strategy, or other aspect of the 2024-2028 Cultural Arts Strategic Plan. If you need to see the Cultural Arts Strategic Plan, again, you can find it at wichita.gov/arts. Like I said before, requests may be between $500 and $10,000. If you're looking for a flight to help you get to a conference, that's going to be on the low end. If you want to build a new permanent piece of public art, that's likely going to be toward the $10,000 range. Finally, your projects can use for-profit partners, but you, as the applicant, must be the primary on the project. You take the risk. We're going to give you the money, and then if your project requires it, you can pay someone to help with whatever aspect of the project you need. If whoever you pay doesn't do what they say they're going to do, that's something you're going to need to figure out. Like I said, the risk is yours. Let's talk about timeline very briefly. September 8th has passed and the applications are open. September 16th and 23rd were our info sessions. Our applications aren't due until Monday, November 3rd at 11:59 p.m. The Cultural Funding Committee will get your application soon after, as long as it meets all of our very basic eligibility guidelines. On December 4th, the committee will deliberate and decide who they think they should recommend to City Council to receive funding. Staff will present those recommendations on December 15th, and City Council will vote. Your funding, should you receive it, will be available for your project on January 1st, 2026. You can apply to the application grant opportunity at wichita.submittable.com. You can see the URL there at the top of the screen. Once you're on our Submittable homepage, you can scroll to the bottom and see the listing for the activation grant opportunity. You'll want to click on the orange Submit button to get started. I know that's a little backward from what you're used to, what you expect, but I believe it's because the company is called Submittable. You begin with the orange Submit button, and when you're done with the application, you're going to hit Submit again. I believe it's a black Submit button the second time. I mentioned earlier that I would tell you where to find the guidelines. Hopefully you've seen it already. Just to the left of that orange Submit button, you'll see the word Guidelines with a down arrow. When you're on wichita.submittable.com, if you click that Guidelines button, it'll reveal the full text for you. If you're still having trouble, or if you want your own copy, you are more than welcome to email me. Again, I'll give you my email at the end, and you can contact me with any questions. Let's talk about the application. The first section is just what's called directory information. We want to know who you are. If you're an individual, where do you live? If you're an organization, where are your offices? Or what's your mailing address? What's your email? What's your phone number? Simple things. After the directory information, you'll see 4 or 5 questions depending on the type of funding you're applying for. If you're applying for capacity building funding, the professional development funding, you'll see 4 questions. If you want funding to make art, programmatic funding, you'll see 5 questions. If you looked at or applied to the Arts Thrive grant, the questions are going to look very similar. The answers are all written. Please do your best and try to limit the amount of ChatGPT you use. It will make you better at this in the long run if you do it yourself. The answers, the boxes for your answers, don't have character limits. We know that these ideas you're pitching can be complicated and require space to explain and to breathe, but, and this is a big but, that doesn't mean we want you to ramble. We want you to stay focused and organized while you're writing these narratives, but please still provide as much detail as you can. You'll see it says application-both at the top of the screen. That means this slide applies to both grants, the grants to make art and the grants for capacity building. It will split in just a moment, and then it'll join back up. I'll try to do my best to make everything clear. So, how does your project or your organization's work connect to the city's cultural plan? You'll see a lot of options there. It's a drop-down, and those are all strategies from the cultural plan. You don't have to pick one of these options we've pre-listed. The bottom bullet you'll see reads Other. If you pick Other, you can use the text box after the question to tell us what you've selected. A lot of these, however, will apply to what you're planning to do. You'll notice the parenthetical in the question. That just signifies that we know if you apply for a capacity building grant, that project isn't necessarily going to apply directly to the cultural plan. But your work does, so please select an option that fits with the work you do. A change from the Arts Thrive application is that you will be asked to briefly explain why you picked that part of the plan. Why does your work or the art you want to make encourage the development of paid professional opportunities? Why does it ensure cultural arts opportunities are provided across the city? That answer may be very simple, but we want you to be able to talk about why what you do connects to the city's cultural plan. Application-programmatic. So you'll see this only applies to the projects that want to make art. Describe your project. We provide in the application several optional questions you can answer to help tease out some detail. You don't have to answer these questions directly. They're provided so you think about as many aspects of your project as possible. And we haven't asked every single possible question here. These are just a few examples. Does your project have a physical location? If your project isn't permanent, when will it happen? If it is, when will it be available? Do you have partners or other sponsors? If so, describe their involvement/role. In the application, we even say don't discount what might be a very tiny partnership. Partnerships are partnerships. The size doesn't always matter. Just being able to say we have these folks partnering with us is important. Again, that's only presented as something for you to think about as you're developing the project in your mind and as you're figuring out how to talk about it. You will be able to upload images or other documents at the end of the application. If, for example, this project is a continuation of work you've done in the past and you want to show us what that looks like, you'll have the space to do that. Not only will you be able to upload things, but we'll also have a section at the end where you can share a URL or two or however many you need. Provide any additional materials you think are necessary to help explain your vision. But again, it's not required. Application, capacity building. Bottom dot is gone because we don't think any images or uploaded documents are necessary to describe your capacity building project. There's still the URL option, but if you need to send a file, email me and we'll figure it out. Again, describe your project. What opportunity would you like to pursue? What's the goal? What is the end goal? What is this opportunity going to get you to? And how will it get you there? How will you measure success for this? If you're improving your marketing, is it through more interactions? Is it through a larger mailing list? How will it help you better serve the residents of Wichita? And then finally, why is this option the best choice for you or your organization? If you're an individual artist and you want to get an online platform to show your work, why is this platform the best choice? These are all optional questions to answer, just there to help find as much detail as possible. Moving on. This question is about your timeline. Describe how you'd go from receiving the grant to completing your finished work. What experience do you have in completing projects like this? Is this the 100th time you've helped students paint skateboards? Let us know. Would you partner with an individual or organization to make the project happen? Again, partnerships can be of any size or length of time. Hopefully you've seen how these questions can overlap a bit. How will you connect with the local community? That's not a required element of these projects, but we provide it for you to think about. If you think it would strengthen your project to connect with the local community, talk about it. Finally, directly, what is your timeline? Break that down even further. How long will it take? What are the steps along the way? We can get so focused on talking about our experience, we forget to talk about how long a project might take. For your reference, these projects will need to be completed in 2026. We're back to both programmatic and capacity building. You might have noticed there isn't a timeline question for capacity building. If you're attending a conference as part of your professional development, let us know when the conference is. But for capacity building, we mainly need to make sure you've completed what you said you were going to do. The growth is never finished, but the project will need to be done by the end of 2026. You will be asked about your budget for both the programmatic, that's making art, grants, and the capacity building / professional development grants. We want you to give us as much detail as you can, within reason, on how you plan to use the funds. This is an incredibly important section of the application. We do recommend you provide as much detail as possible. But, and this is that third bullet point, we know that for certain projects, especially capacity building projects, you're not going to have a lot of line items. If, for example, you're applying to pay for an online platform to show your work, your line item might just be X number of months subscription to this website. That doesn't mean you haven't provided a lot of detail. You've provided all the detail, or pretty close to it. But maybe it breaks down to website development, $500, hosting, $400, contracting artists to create new images for the website, $100. There are likely things to break down. There's detail to find even in the quote smaller unquote projects. Try to just use your best sense for what you think the committee needs to know. If you're fabricating public art, we might not need to specifically know how much you plan to spend on solder, but we would love to know larger sections of it. So just what you can provide, please provide. Use your best judgment. You will be able to select how you want to provide your budget. You can upload a document. So if you've got an Excel sheet you've been using, you can put that directly into the application. If you don't want to upload something, we do provide a fillable table inside the application. Alternatively, some folks just don't get numbers, or numbers make them nervous, or they're just not that great at explaining them. So we do have a third option. You can talk about your budget via text. You can write a narrative about how your budget's going to work. Half the funds are going to go to this. Another section is going to do X. Don't let the fact that we are asking for a budget hold you back from applying. We have an option that will meet your ability. No matter which of those three options you select, uploading, inputting, or using text, a text box will appear to let you explain any part of your budget you need to. You will have that chance to add clarity. This is the final question, and I don't count it as one of the 4 or 5 because it's unscored. I'm always a little worried that we're going to get 5 incredible projects and they will all end up with the same score, and so the committee won't know how to differentiate them. Like it was in the Arts Thrive grant, this question is here to give you the opportunity to make your argument. You don't have to describe what the project is, you've already done that. But I would encourage you to use this space to write a few sentences about why you think the project is important, or why your work in general is important. Again, though, if you don't feel like doing this, you can skip right over it. It does not affect your score at all. Very briefly, I want to show you what you're writing toward. There are only 3 questions on the committee's rubric, so there are 15 points you can earn. First, how well does your project align with the cultural plan? And remember, you can use a text box to help explain your logic to your selection. Second, how well did you discuss your project? And again, that mentions detail, right? The third point rates the timeline and budget. Those aren't separate bullet points because capacity building doesn't have a timeline, and we're scoring these against each other. Try to keep all 3 of these ideas in mind while you're writing your narrative. Final selection. The Cultural Funding Committee, made up of 11 members, will vote to decide which projects, if any, earn funding. Now, if any is there in the incredibly rare case that we only get one application and it was submitted because a cat ran across the keys and entered something. We're not going to give the cat $50,000, even if we really, really want to. We will have enough great applications, I know, and we will award all the funding. The committee is encouraged to select projects that are varied based on their many qualities. This is, again, from the Arts Thrive Grant. We want the committee to consider equally all the types of applications we're going to receive. We'd like a good split between making art and capacity building, and a good split between individuals and organizations. Even within the types, within making art, we'd like them to select different types of projects: murals, statues, performances, recordings. Within capacity building, if it's marketing, conference attendance, any number of things, we want a selection. Keep in mind that this is all within reason. Just like with the cat, we don't have a quota. We aren't going to give out programmatic funding to just any application. It will still need to hit a to-be-determined threshold. For example, if we don't get any good capacity building applications, we may have nothing but programmatic recipients. That likely won't be the case, but it's a possibility. Because the projects are selected based on scoring and the ensuing discussion, the final awardees may not represent all the highest scoring applications. That does happen. If, for example, the highest scoring applications are all murals, the committee likely will not fund all of them. So, one of those high scoring murals might not receive funding. Unfortunately, that's just the nature of the process. Receiving the funding. After the contract is finalized, you can receive your funding as a lump sum. We know for a fact that we will ask you to save receipts, invoices, any agreements you write, things like that. So please keep that in mind from the beginning. Other paperwork may include, additionally, proof of payment. An example of that would be a bank statement showing you spent the money. Or it could include proof of receipt, and that would be proof of any purchased items that came to you if part of your project was to make a large purchase. We would want some proof that you received it. Funding can only be used for authorized purposes. What is an authorized purpose? If you receive funding, an authorized purchase is what you propose to do in your application, unless city staff have told you that a certain part can't be done. You will know that ahead of time, though, and it's really not common. If your proposal includes a lot of unallowable costs, which I'll get to momentarily, we likely will remove those from your authorized purposes or authorized purchases, however you want to think about it. Now, things change, and you may need to pivot while completing your project. If that happens, you just need to let us know, and we'll work with you on changing those authorized purposes. You aren't totally locked in. But again, you need to work with us if you need something changed. All spending needs to be considered allowable. That's a technical term, and really it just means the spending that isn't unallowable. Some unallowable costs are listed in the guidelines. Now, the list in the guidelines, though, is not exhaustive, but alcohol, lobbying expenses, direct fundraising, and regranting the funds are on that list. They are unallowable. If you spend part of the funding we give you on one of these unallowable costs, we're going to ask for that part of the funding back. Or you're going to have to spend an equal amount of your own money on an allowable cost. It gets very complicated, so please just try to avoid it. Once more, if you want a longer list of unallowable costs, you can check the guidelines. It is not all the potential unallowable costs. If you're worried about something or uncertain, please feel free to email me and ask, and my email is coming up in just a moment. We will figure it out on our end and let you know what our opinion is. I do want to stress, most costs are allowable. Try not to worry too much. Completing the project. We will work with you throughout the project. If you receive a grant to make art, programmatic funding, we're going to ask you to track attendance data. And again, we'll work with you to figure out what that means, including where and when you need to track it. Whatever type of grant you receive, we're going to require you to close out the project no later than January 31st, 2027. Now, just to point out, that is about 16 months from our current date. And what does close out mean? That means you need to have all the paperwork to me, receipts, final report, attendance data, if you're doing that, by January 31, 2027. The last day to spend the money is December 31st, 2026, so that's a month earlier. Hopefully, you'll have all the funding spent well before then. But again, we will be in contact with you throughout the project to help you figure all this out. If, for whatever reason, you didn't use all of the funding we gave you, we're going to ask you to return what you didn't spend at the end of the project. Please spend all the funding you receive. If you need help figuring out how to do so, we will help you. You do not get to keep it if you don't use it on the project. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me or to call me. My email address is jkoza@wichita.gov. My office phone number is 316-350-3241. One more time, my email is jkoza, Jkoza, @wichita.gov. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.